Dear listeners, most people in the long term relationships don't fall out of love. They fall out of connection, gradually, quietly, often without noticing. The intimacy that often felt effortless starts to require effort. And then it requires courage. And then for a lot of people, it just stops being attempted. But disconnection in a relationship is not a kind of verdict, but it's a signal. And today's conversation is all about what it actually takes to hear that signal and something real with it. So, hey, dear listeners, welcome back to another powerful episode of Mind Meets Machine, where we explore the full landscape of what it means to be human, including the parts of life we don't talk about nearly enough. I'm your host, Avik, and I'm really glad that all of you are here today for this one. And my guest today is the best-selling author, sex and intimacy educator, and coach, and the founder of Passionate Intimacy Retreats, where she helps couples move from disconnection back toward genuine passion and the closeness. So please welcome our guest, Xanet. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'll be happy to be here and have this conversation with you.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today. And so, Janet, like before we get into the work, I'm curious about what drew you to this particular space. Like the intimacy and sexuality are the areas most people navigate privately and most professionals stay well away from also. So,
Sure.
what called you towards this work?
It's a great question. So it was not a linear approach to it,
Yeah.
as life often throws you a lot of curveballs. So my background is a healthcare lawyer, but I was living in a sexless marriage for 26 years. Not completely sexless because I have children and grandchildren, but pretty much sexless as we define sexless at this point.
Yeah.
And when I left that marriage at age 50, I decided that I needed to really just understand what happened, like what happened in the dynamics between the two of us, what was going on for me that made me feel no desire, feel totally sexually shut down. And that was the doorway to my opening and sexual awareness and sexual awakening and sexual healing that I didn't even realize I actually needed, to be honest. So that's what drew me into the field. It was through my own, like many people in the therapy world, I am a wounded healer, right? And what drew me into it was like my own healing process, which was so profound and changed my life in so many different ways. And then recognizing that, oh wow, maybe this is something I'm really passionate about. Like healthcare is fine, healthcare law is fine, all that stuff was fine. But it wasn't like, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I'm actually going to change the world. I was not changing the world,
Yeah.
unfortunately, right? And apparently, I had this very big desire to change the world as much as I could and leave a legacy, I guess. So it just became like a passion project for me. Like, wow, what if I did this? What if there was somebody like me when I was 25, 26, 28, 30, struggling with this? How different my life would have been if I had been able to get some support. So can I do that for other people? Can I do it for other women? Can I do it for other couples? That was really my driving force.
That's really interesting. And here, definitely it's a very small word, one word, but it has a lot of value, the misconception. So I want to start with that because I think there are several that quietly damage couples before they even try to address what's happening. And the biggest one I encourage is the idea that if intimacy has faded, it means something fundamental is broken or missing between two people. So, from that perspective, like, what do you think? I mean, what is the misconception about intimacy and the design in the long term relationship that you find yourself addressing most consistently?
Yeah, well, you know, I think the fact that intimacy fades over a period of time is at some level natural, right? Like we start out in a new relationship with all of this new relationship energy, all of this juiciness, all of this like high sex drive. And that's just really, it's a chemical reaction.
Yeah.
Honest, it's a dopamine flooding our systems. I like to say it's like Mother Nature's way of ensuring that we continue to procreate, right? That we continue to maintain the species. But that fades over after 6 to 18 month
Mm.
period of time. And then the real relationship begins. Those hormones aren't there anymore, right? And then a couple has to kind of make a decision and recognize like, where are we really now? Who are we really now? How do we want to actually be in relationship when we don't have that dopamine constantly flooding our system, right? So, intimacy fades because there's a hormonal response or a lack thereof of a hormonal response from the new relationship energy, which is natural and normal. Intimacy fades because life becomes real. We have to focus on our jobs. We have to, children come into play, right? Like there's a lot of other things that become a priority in our relationship as a relationship deepens and you grow, especially if you're on the beginning of a
Yeah.
relationship, right? Especially as in a younger stage when children are in the picture, or even in a second marriage when older children come into the picture, right? And we also, and I think this is also just a natural response, right?
Mm.
We start talking to each other less in the way we used to, less about like, share your dreams. Let's talk about our passions. Let's look at our future together, right? All of that beautiful conversation that you often have in the beginning of a relationship when everybody's like a new shiny object. And then we turn into like, did you see the grocery list on the wall? Who's going to take the dog to the vet? Right. So our conversations get very much more logistical and practical.
Yeah.
Um, and, again, this is pretty natural. Like we take, just like this is just what people do. Like we take the relationship and we take our partner for granted. We
Yeah.
just assume that things can continue going the way they are without actually making it a priority and putting the relationship at least very close to the top of our very long to-do list, including our life and careers and other things, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of natural because that's how human beings are. We fall into these patterns, these like comfortable places, and maybe we don't want to have hard conversations, right? So it's easy just to avoid the fact that intimacy is fading, but nobody wants to bring it up and doesn't know how to say it. Uh, but the good news is it's all fixable, right? Like
Yeah.
it's all fixable.
It's fixable, definitely.
Yeah.
And the difference between emotional intimacy and the sexual intimacy, because a lot of couples experience them falling out of sync, where
Yes.
one feels present and other feels not. So, what is the relationship between the two? Like,
Well,
what tends to happen?
they're they're very interconnected, right?
Okay.
They're different, but they are interconnected. So, I like to talk about it I like to use a different terminology. I mean, yes, sexual intimacy and emotional intimacy, but I want to go back a step here, Avi, and talk about attunement. Because when you're out of sync with your partner, emotionally or sexually, there's a misattunement that's happening, right? When I think about attunement, I think about, two different keys on a piano, right? Or tuning forks, right? So, like, if they're both at the same D sharp, which is really kind of bad, let me pick
Yeah.
a better one, F sharp, then everything is great. The
Uh,
energy is flowing, there's synchronicity, right? It's harmonious. And that's when you're feeling attuned to your partner. You're present with them, you get them, they get you, right? That creates emotional connection, the emotional attunement, and generally will also create the physical attunement, right? But what happens when you're out of sync, which one of you is on F sharp and the other one's on a D flat or D minor, right? It's horrible.
yeah.
And that's the misattunement that happens in couples, which is a precursor to feeling out of sync with each other emotionally and or sexually, right?
Mm.
So we really want to look at that and try to figure out, well, how do we come back in tune with each other? Like couples come in and say that to me all the time. It's like, it's like we're in two different wavelengths. You've heard that, right? We're two ships, passing in the middle of the night, right? That's a couple that's misattuned to each other. And that affects the emotional intimacy because you're not feeling connected with each other. You don't feel seen. That doesn't feel good. You don't feel heard. That doesn't feel good, right? You might feel that, there's a lot of criticism coming your way, that you can't do anything that's right, like whatever it is, right? It doesn't really, you really don't feel like you have that solid connection between each other. Um, and then should I keep on going? Because I'm hearing background noise.
Okay. Yeah, 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 it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's the physical misattunement as well, right? Where sexually you just are not being present with each other. You're not flowing. You don't know what each other wants. You can't feel in your body what your partner wants either. So that can be very, very challenging as well.
Exactly. I agree, definitely. And like when couples come to you, whether for the coaching or for one of your retreats, what are the root patterns you see most often? Like not the presenting complaint, but which is usually something like we have grown apart or we don't connect anymore. But the deeper thing underneath that, I mean, if you can share it, no need to take the names, but I mean, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, sometimes they don't even recognize that. Like they know that things aren't working, but they don't realize what's happening underneath,
yeah,
right? How it shows up symptomatically is maybe there's a lot of rejection, right? One partner feels not desired, because perhaps they've initiated and been rejected and then been rejected again and then been rejected again. So they don't feel desired by their partner. The other partner might feel pressure to perform, pressure to have sex. So it often shows up in like, we're not able to connect with each
yeah,
other because there's all of this like rejection that happens. And then I pull back, right? I feel rejected. I pull back. My partner tries to come forward. I still feel rejected. So there's patterns that go on with respect to, attachment styles,
yeah,
if you will, like, right, pursuer, somebody's pursuing, somebody's distancing, somebody's pursuing, somebody's distancing. But typically, when you dig deep underneath that, both people are feeling disconnected. Often there's a lot of feeling of loneliness, right? Because it can be very, very lonely to be in a relationship where you are not connected to your partner, but you're living under the same roof and even sleeping in the same bed, right? It can be very, very
exactly.
lonely. And then if you dig even deeper under there, you'll find out, or I'll find out, that there's been a lot of they're in a pattern because all couples get into patterns and those patterns started very early on in the relationship, almost always. And that they're not finding each other, in this pattern, and that there's been a lot of conflict that hasn't been repaired. Right. And so underneath it, like there's some resentment that's going on. There's some anger that's going on. If you constantly get rejected, you're hurt. If you're criticized by a lot by your partner, you're hurt. Right. If you're not feeling desired by your partner, you're also hurt. So there's a lot of underlying conflicts that happen that have never been addressed. They just get swept under the rug. And that is a problem because they don't go away. They never go away. They just keep on building up and up and up over time. And you keep on repeating the same pattern and hurting each other over and over again.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And here one more thing is like shame, right? It
Yeah,
sits somewhere near that center
totally.
of intimacy, right? The
Yeah,
struggles.
yeah,
And not always named, but often disguised as something else like avoidance, distance. So how does shame operate in the intimacy space? Like how do you begin to create that enough safety for someone who is actually put it down?
yeah. Well, that is the basis of the work that I do. It's the basis. I'm just going to do a little show and tell for a moment.
Okay,
It's the
sure.
basis of my new book,
Okay.
The Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, as well, right?
Yeah.
Which is really about like, how do we recreate, or maybe for the first time, create the emotional safety that a couple needs to have in order to be able to even say, I'm feeling shame about that. Right. You're putting pressure on me to have an orgasm, just putting this out there, but I have a hard time with that. And I'm
Yeah.
ashamed to even admit that to you and to tell you that maybe there's something that I need differently. Right.
Right.
But you can't say that if you don't have the emotional safety in the relationship, because there's a lot of fear that it's going to be used against you in the future, which we do, right? Especially around sex. We use challenges,
Mm.
we use it as, some sex is often used as manipulation, as transactional, right? None
Exactly.
of these things create emotional safety. If anything, they create a lot of emotional distance and fear, right? And so, but again, you know, number one, these are skills that everybody can learn, which is why I wrote
Mm.
the book, so that people get it. Like, these are skills. You're not born this way, right? And generally, nobody's taught us these things about how can you be a good listener? What does empathy actually feel like? And the importance of that in the context of a relationship, right? And how we have a tendency when a partner has a problem to try to fix it, because we're all fixers, but that doesn't actually fix it. It makes it worse, right?
Mm. True.
Yeah. So we have to recreate that from the get-go, right? And
Mm.
by being present with each other, by establishing eye contact with each other,
Yeah.
by opening up the space for a little bit of vulnerability to share our feelings.
I agree. So what you're saying is it's definitely kind of accumulated silence, like things that were never said, needs
Yes,
that were never named,
right.
vulnerabilities that were protected for so long that they became walls right now. So I mean, yes, I mean the work of intimacy is partly the work of dismantling those walls carefully enough that both the people feel safe in what's underneath. So
Yes.
definitely, definitely. That is a skill, I would say. That's a definitely a skill. So
Yes, and but I mean, I'm really good at it, but it's just, there are aspects of this, there are pieces of this that, everybody can learn, right? And it's
exactly.
important that we learn those skills in order to have like a healthy relationship with somebody
True.
and a good sex life.
Yeah. No, exactly, definitely. And your passionate intimacy retreats brings couples together in a dedicated space to do this work. And I'm curious about what happens in that container that can't quite happen in everyday life, even in the with the best intentions. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if you can share a bit.
Yeah, of course. You know, I started doing private intimacy treats here in Asheville about 7 years ago, right in
Okay.
the middle, right in the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay.
And um, what I found is that when you give couples and a very intense, immersive experience where there's no distractions, as in their children aren't there, their dogs aren't there, there's no television to disturb them, right?
Yeah.
They can really focus on each other. They can have the experience of what's it like to actually be with each other
Yeah.
over a 4 or 5 day period of time, and learn how to reconnect, have that emotional connection that they're actually been missing, and work on problems that show up during the coaching, during the retreat in real time.
Yeah.
Because, when you've got somebody in your office for 6 hours, right? Not two, maybe over 2 days, their stuff as you're working with them is going to show up. Whether I'm teaching them how to have a conversation about how they want to be touched, and then demonstrating different types of touch and having them try it, and then all of a sudden one person gets triggered, it's
True.
like, "You're
Exactly.
not doing it right. That's not what I want, blah, blah, blah," right? Like, their stuff shows up, right? Which is beautiful, because then we have an opportunity to like, "Okay, let's
Yeah.
dig into this, right? Let's work on this. Why is this showing up? What's going on here? This is a pattern. This has been
Mm.
happening for years.
Yeah.
and it's never been fully explored, and maybe it's tends up being a pattern and a conflict that's never been fully repaired. So that's a huge advantage to be able to do immersive work,
Mm,
is that you're showing up in real time with all of your stuff, and the opportunity to have me there to help coach them through it and unpack it and repair conflict or whatever it is that's happened. I think that's why the
mm,
people who go on retreats end up having a very powerful experience, because it's not like coming in for therapy once a week and then going back to your life, right? In addition,
right.
they have a lot of time to integrate what we've talked about, what we've worked on, and to experiment back in their, beautiful space. And again, come back in the next day and say, like, this worked, but this didn't work,
Didn't
right?
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like for someone who is listening, who cannot attend a retreat, whether for practical or financial reasons,
Yep.
what do you think are the most meaningful practices you would recommend for a couple who genuinely wants to begin rebuilding intimacy in their everyday life?
Okay. Well, here's my the book, right?
Okay.
Because the book actually has, I don't know, something like 30 different practices in it that will take you through, depending upon where you are in the relationship and what the struggle is, that will help you start to reconnect with each other. Just being present with your partner, like putting the phone down, that's a huge, challenge for a lot of people, obviously,
Exactly.
right? Just putting the phone down and looking at looking, facing your partner and creating some eye contact and being with them for 5 minutes is one of the most powerful and challenging things, because it's incredibly vulnerable to do that with a partner, but it does bring up emotions and it brings up, connection. So there's little things that you can do that are actually incredibly, incredibly powerful. So I would say, start there. I also, I offer a lot of free resources, but I also have a new couples group program
Okay.
as well, which is also an immersive experience at a much lower price point over a 90-day period of time. Right.
Exactly.
So, there's other ways to be able to, with me at least, to work.
Exactly. And couples who do the work, to the retreat, who starts the conversations, who begin to, uh, I'd say, who begin to rebuild. So what tends to happen when they return to normal life?
Well, it kind of depends on the couple. A lot of times I offer couples some continuing support, because, the reality it is you come to any type of immersive experience, you have a big expansion and you're going to go back into contraction when you come back into your real life, and your patterns will reemerge. So some couples do need some continued support and
Mm,
accountability. That's very, very common in any type of immersive kind of experience that people have. But there are many couples who, for whatever reason, and I don't know the what is, but for whatever reason, are able to really retain where they were. Like, I just talked to somebody the other day who came to one of my Costa Rica retreats, and they were on the verge of leaving the retreat. They were having such issues, but, through doing some private work with me, and then really like the process of the group being there to support both of them, right? Which is one of the beautiful things about doing a group retreat, is
mm,
that there's a lot of other people who are there to support you. They had this amazing shift in their relationship. And that was in February. This is what, we're almost in May, April,
yeah.
right? And they were like, yeah, things are still great. Like, we're really talking to each other. And so, a lot of couples are just able to see that switch. They feel that intense connection that they haven't felt in such a long time. And they're like, we need more of this, right?
Mm,
We've learned what Xanet had to teach us. We have her book in case we need it. We have her on, dial if we need text
exactly.
message her. but, but we really took it in and shifted things in our relationship. And that is not infrequent.
Exactly. Amazing. Amazing. I mean, that's such an honest and important things to address. Definitely. And because intimate disconnection is really felt, uh, I'd say, equally by both people at the same time. And the one who is feeling it most acutely often doesn't know how to bring that, their partner along without it feeling like
True.
pressure, criticism. Right? So that's really great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Zane,
Yeah.
like this one is for the person who is listening right now, maybe they'll be listening, who is in a relationship that used to feel alive and doesn't anymore.
Mm.
So who misses that connection they once had, but is not sure like it's still possible to get back on it or not. So what would you want them to hear right now?
I want them to hear that all of this is fixable, right? Like, there's unless you're on the verge of even verge of separation. I've helped a lot of couples come back from the verge of separation, right? None of this is set in stone. Relationships change over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
But what's important to understand is it takes two, I like to say this, it takes two people to break a relationship. It also takes two people to repair a relationship, right? So both partners, really need to be on board and aware of like, wow, there's some challenges here and we need to make some changes, whether we need to seek support or we need to read some books. That's what I want them to hear. Like, don't feel like there's no hope. There's hope.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if someone wants to connect with you personally, how they can connect?
They can come to my website, which is passionate intimacy retreats with an s.com. Passionate intimacy retreats s.com. And then you can find out how to work with me, get free resources, all sorts of information that you'll find there. My blogs.
Amazing. Amazing. So dear listeners, like I would love to say that if I could hold one thing from this conversation today, it would be that fashion is a long term relationship and not something that either exists or does not, but it is something that can be chosen and rebuilt, right? So,
And rebuilt, right?
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And it starts with the courage to want it again. So that
Yes.
is much important. So, the listeners, this is the wrap for today's episode. If something Zene said today landed for you, a recognition or maybe a quiet wish or something that you have been feeling but not quite saying out loud, then take that seriously. It actually matters the most. And as I said, all of Zenith's details will be there in the show notes. And if this conversation belongs I mean, in someone else's world right now, please share it with them gently, the way a good conversation deserves to be passed on. So that way, you are helping someone as well. So with this hope, this is your host Avik, and this is Mind Meets Machine. Intimacy is not a luxury; it's a part of what makes us whole, right?
Love
So
it.
exactly. So take care of yourselves and yes, ourselves as well. So ourselves and yourselves as well, and each other. So see you soon in the next one. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.